Well, we are back broadcasting. Hopefully, this
Yeah.
one's not going to be blocked. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's I just won't use the other. I just read from them, and I'm sure that the Facebook. There you go. We've got people coming back. Sorry for the lock. Hello, David. So I will just briefly share this and put notifications.
Yes, I'll just do a share.
So that let people know that we are back. If it's coming up anywhere, I just need to refresh my Facebook page. Well, the wonders of modern technology, eh?
Yes, yes. I am surprised we fell foul though because we're commenting on the video rather than
Yes,
showing the
yeah.
video.
Well, that's the thing. So,
But hey.
life, eh? So let me.
Yes,
Lindy is back, and I'm sure everyone else will find us as well. Yes,
yeah.
Andre's back.
Andre. Yeah.
So I have just shared my link again. So let's just share now public, so everyone can see. And we're getting people back now. So losing time, so don't want to lose too much time on this one.
No.
So people at home, so we were talking about how well the situation was handled. For me, it says it's how far we've come.
Yes.
And it's
Yes,
how far the world has come, that it's no longer a taboo, or, for example, with me, how obsessive a conversation it was when I first came out as gay. So, for me, it shows the brilliance of it's life, get on with it.
Yes, yes, exactly.
In order to boo that. However, I am aware that you received a text message just before we began regarding facilities for convenience.
Yes. Somebody shared something with me that I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but it looks like there's legislation going through in the UK that says all new public buildings must be built with single-sex facilities. We can't have
A unisex.
mixed gender, unisex toilet anymore in public facilities, which is a bit.
We'll reopen the trans debate of who gets to go where.
Exactly.
For me, that growing up in the 80s and 90s, watching Ally McBeal, one of the things that I remember most is that they had a unisex.
Yes.
And it was no big thing. Also, the fact that in a unisex toilet, they're all stalls anyway. I mean, to be fair, I probably wouldn't want to go into a gents' toilet next to a big old builder taking his lunchtime ablutions. But it's not about me. It's about everyone feeling included and part of not only the debate. I mean, the fact is, this has kind of come somewhat out of the blue.
Yes.
Even though it's not a big surprise. But for me, whenever I open a service on a Thursday night, I say all are welcome.
Yep.
Now, for me, if I were to then say, except for you, except for you, except for you, or I would do something that meant all did not feel welcome, then I would expect backlash. I always do my best to be open and honest and welcoming to everyone. And if it's not for some people, or they take offense to something, then they're well within their right to have a conversation with me about it. And I'll either explain my position or think, yeah, I could have done better, actually. But for me, even though we've come so far as the one race, the human race, we're still lacking. but still lacking.
Yeah. I mean, given my other life with the Rainbow Project, I still get things wrong.
Yeah.
And I am happy for people to say to me, whoa, that's not how I want to be identified, how I want to be gendered. And apologies, try harder, please correct me if I continue to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And like you were saying, or like you said to me, we stand on the shoulders of giants who went through hell and back to get us the rights we have up to this point. It is our duty as a community to push those rights that bit further. In fact, I don't want to call them rights. It's just being allowed to live your life, which is not a right that should be given to you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just you exist and you should be allowed to exist no matter what. And I always say to people when they talk to me about the Rainbow Project, if I'm speaking to a new service user who's a bit shy or nervous about coming in, if you walk into the room next week and say, today I identify as a giraffe, we will all just go, oh, hi, giraffe. Do you want a cup of tea? It's no issue. How does that choice impact my life? It doesn't. So let's just get on with it. And I could go on and on and on about this whole trans debate and the way it's exploding over Twitter and things. And it's just, but I will fight to the death, as I said at the beginning, for your freedom of speech and your right to opinion. But you must pay the consequences for those opinions if you're going to espouse them.
And because recognizing the fact that other people will pay the price for your opinions too. Eunice, exactly. I love you just for you. That's the person that matters. Loving, caring, and kind. If we were all the same, what a wonderful world it would be. And Paul Bannister's come to say hello as well. Hi, Paul.
Hi,
Glad to have you
Paul.
in the chat. Talking about you earlier. So yeah, I mean, from the spiritual perspective, you know, how can any spiritualist be offended by the inner feelings of an individual when we all know that this flesh is transitory and irrelevant to the greater meaning of our eternal existence? We will, as I was saying to someone rang me about something completely different, but it applies. The whole eternal life is as energy. We are transformed into energy, not matter. So therefore, you know, what does it matter, with the greatest of respect, what gender-driven physical attributes I have, and what influence does that have on other people? It really, really doesn't. I mean, I might identify as a male, but everyone still calls me a miserable old woman, and half the time they're probably right. You know, I could easily say that I identify as a mistake and that my pronouns are oops, oh dear, and never mind. But, you know, what does that impact on what contribution to society I have? What impact does that have on how I am perceived as an individual? Because we've spent, and everybody agrees that we've spent, you know, 250,000 years of human evolution building up the understanding of the individual. Well, if we are an individual, we should respect the individual. And we have the opposing statement, which I'm always happy to. I disagree again with that statement. If I'm 12 years old and identify as 26 old, yeah, that's not really gender related, but I do get your point. There are inevitably always going to be some people that are frankly going to take the mick out of the need of this topic. And I'm not saying you are at all, Andrew, because you're absolutely right in what you're saying. what I'm saying is the whole identifying thing. There will be people who will just decide to randomly make something up. They haven't felt it their whole life. They haven't felt it in their heart. They haven't cried themselves to sleep wanting to wake up being reborn in another body. So you're absolutely right to bring that up, Andre.
Perfect example. One of the, we'll call them the gender critical camp. I don't even particularly want to give them that credit.
A group to
I will. Yeah. I, as a 12-year-old, they put on Twitter, wanted to be a dinosaur. I wanted to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I grew out of it, and was going down that hole. It's a phase thing. And this, how she kept the tone as warm and, you know, there were words on the screen, but you could feel they were responding with love and kindness.
Yes.
Did you cry every morning when you got out of bed and you realized you didn't have a tail with scales on it? Did you look in the mirror and look at your long arms and want to cut them off so you would have little short arms to match that dinosaur persona? I don't think you did. So please don't use that as the way to get me to get to me. And I thought, that's absolutely wonderful. I couldn't have been that nice about it, to be fair. And that was the whole premise of when we talked right back last year about setting up the Independent Spiritualist Alliance, that I would be on board if we were completely open to everybody, regardless. And you were very much of the same mind, so it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other individuals on the council, absolutely the same.
Well, absolutely the same. And I feel the church. I always say we are Big C. I always say we are a faith-based organisation rather than religious per se, because religion throws up orthodoxy and everything else, which is everything that we're talking about, which is the church is there to nurture and support that individual to be the best version of themselves that they can be with God's love and God's help. And absolutely. If that is, we go and visit them in hospital. I have a friend in Hull who's going for their gender affirming surgery on the 12th. I will be going and visiting them, seeing what they need. And that's my job as a minister, is to go and sit with that person, hold the hand and say, how are you feeling? Is there anything I can do? You know, I know you can't hoover. Do you want me to come and run the vac around your room? You know, that's my job, not to judge, not to say you are wrong. And that's me. So anyway.
Exactly. And Andre, you know, you've once again made a good point. You know, people do get wound up and get really, really antsy, but I think you'll find that most genuine individuals will just politely correct you once and leave it at that. As with every group, be it spiritualist, be it the LGBTQIA plus community, be it working in retail, be it any organization, be it any church, you're always going to have those individuals that are arguing for argument's sake rather than representing what they believe. And I'll explain my reasons behind that. As a gay minister for the last 10 years, I thought I'd been there, done it all and seen it all. You know what it's like, you know, I can handle anything. And I hadn't. And of course I didn't. A couple of years ago, I was involved in a video for Pride that was made by the company that I then worked for. And it still feels weird saying that. And one of our members of the company did a lot of workshops on trans rights. And do you know what? I was so naive that I assumed that trans rights had come along more or less at the same pace as all of the other umbrellaed under the LGBTQ plus rights. Of course, they hadn't. And she educated me a great deal on that subject. So when it came to doing that video, I didn't know what I left it to spirit what I was going to say about it, and didn't even script myself, sent the video in, they liked it. And I bookmarked this video about someone called Paul, who was actually not wanting to be called Paul, who wanted to be female. And it really, really got me, the journey that Paul's journey had been on. And to the extent that before I left said company, I actually sent a message to Bobby Picard, who was the lady in question who spoke about trans rights, and actually said, look, you know, I may be part of this community. I may feel that I try to fight for LGBTQ plus rights, but I didn't know it all. And I want to thank you for opening my eyes to it. And she'd had a pretty bad day by the reaction that she gave, and it had picked her up because somebody had listened and somebody had heard and not reacted with arrogance and ignorance. And that's from within or without the community, because, you know, just as I was saying in response to Andre's comment, which was absolutely right, that there's always going to be extremes. And we're going to move on in a moment, because we are going to carry on and, you know, fill in that extra 10 minutes that we didn't have. If you're okay to do that, because we've got one more, more subject.
Of course.
I think for me, media, we've mentioned it before, media and onset of all of the particular issues that have grown up on extremes have been fueled by media and social media. When it comes in a sort of a final analysis, and feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong, yes, we've come far, but we've still got long way to go when you consider that on London at the weekend, you'd still got huge pickets and protests and the whole God hates you know what and all of this. Whilst that is still going on, there will always be a need to stand up and be counted.
Yeah, which, if you bring it back to the original question you asked at the beginning of this piece, which is, what is pride? Pride, yes, is a celebration, but pride is still a protest.
Yeah.
It still is a protest. And nine days out of 10, I get up and I'm happy and I can face it. But there's that 10th day where you think, I'm tired of it. I just want to, I want people to be allowed to be, and I'm tired of it. Yes, Michael, I know pride is a protest.
Absolutely,
and you're right, we need both types of people.
Absolutely. I mean, there is that balance to what I said just briefly before we move on, although technically speaking, in some ways we're not. Imagine how many times I've had to say my name is Nick, and if someone then said, oh, what Mick? You know, if every single time I said my name was Nick and I was called Mick, I'd end up getting wound up and stamping my feet about it.
Yeah.
A name is a description. A name is something we are called attention by, as is pronouns. And if we identify as something, we don't know whether we're the first person to make the mistake or the millionth. And I think we have to take that into account as well. So thank you for that counterbalance, Michael.
Yeah, as I also, just going back to my other life with the Rainbow Project, we are open to everybody. We have people from all over our rainbow coming through the doors, and we have the normal people, Nick. We let them in for a cup of tea, and people will say to me, but I'm frightened of getting it wrong. And I say, if you get it wrong in error, we will correct you politely and move on.
Yeah.
It's when you're out there and you're with a trans person and they are misgendered deliberately, you know the difference. And that's
Absolutely.
where people will get a bit antsy about it and go on. But yeah,
Absolutely.
there we are.
So in final analysis and by way of counterpoint, moving on to the next subject, it's all about what's inside that really matters. It's all about the soul that makes us who we are. But the question then, of course, is when does that soul come into that physical body? Yes, Roe v. Wade, after 5 decades, I believe, has been overturned, basically discounting the rights of women all over the place. Now, I have to say, the overturning of Roe v. Wade doesn't automatically do away with abortions. What the overturning does is put it back to the decision of the state government.
Yes.
However, before this announcement, there were a great number of individuals intent on knowing very much that this was going to happen anyway. So they created trigger resolutions that would automatically come into law the minute the overturning of Roe v. Wade happened. Now, as a non-American, I have to say, I don't fully understand the whole system. However, I'm going to, for once, finish the conversation before I start it. In no way, shape, or form does anything we are about to say counterpoint one simple truth. And that simple truth is a woman's right to choose. That's it. End of. It's a woman's body. I think what we will end up discussing will probably back it up more than anything else. But, the whole argument of, when does the breath of life come? When does the breath of life happen? As I was saying to you beforehand, for me, a being so infinite that could create this whole thing that we're going through right now, so clever and intricate that can see a tiny sparrow fall, would know whether that life was going to get on Earth or not, and would use some essence of soul to kickstart that life that exists there, but would not necessarily have it so tied in and locked in that you could call it life. Now, I was going to share a video, but I don't want to get us knocked off again. So I will have to do some reading up. But basically, in America on the 28th of April this year, United States Senator, and that's a state senator, not a United States senator, Senator for Oklahoma, Warren Hamilton, questioned why ectopic pregnancies should be allowed as an exception to the banning of abortion. Everyone was having a go at him because what he said was actually quite disgusting. Absolutely. He was calling it the murder of a life that is ectopic. He was comparing it to, why should we murder people because their daddy was a rapist or an incestual creep? How can we compare ectopic pregnancies to that situation without actually understanding that an ectopic pregnancy is virtually nearly always fatal if left unchecked to both parties? That's the first thing. Now, I will say since then, he has corrected himself, admitted his mistake, and pretty much apologized and said he doesn't have that opinion anymore. But for me, someone who is making a law should understand what it is. This is where I see something different on that clip to everyone else. Nobody could actually stand up and say to him, because an ectopic pregnancy is not a pregnancy that is viable. Not one of them could give that defense. Not one of them. So for me, I think there is a huge amount of scientific ignorance demonstrated by this decision. When it comes to the spiritual side and whether life is, there from the moment of conception or not, I don't think that if I was born prematurely at minus 24 seconds, I would have got too far. Maybe down a river swimming like a tadpole and being eaten by the next guppy. But, we've got to be sensible about these things. And I think there is absolutely no respect for the individual. Once again, it's all about the individual in this situation. Abortion can be used to be something really, really quite horrific. People are forced to have abortions, especially in the sex slave trade. And it can be used to brutalize women. But to say that it shouldn't happen at all, no matter the circumstance, which was what the argument was in that particular scenario.
Yeah, it was. It was
absolutely out of order.
Yeah, there are no instances where abortion is right.
Absolutely.
Who are we to say that? Who are we to say that?
Absolutely. And, Francine Prose wrote in The Guardian about the passage that she admired most, which was one of Justice Blackmun, who originally wrote the legislation, for want of a better term, based around the decision of Roe v. Wade. That it was very counterbalanced, very argumentative to itself, but also very poetic and understanding and very sympathetic. By no means, it goes on to say, is Roe v. Wade perfect, but it does still, give the guidance that women should have this discussion with the doctor first. And, I think they should have a conversation. Nobody should do anything medically without a conversation with the doctor to understand exactly what is going on. Are you in an emotional turmoil that might actually you feel more comfortable with the situation if you've had a conversation? Are you being forced into this? Well, in this case, if you are being forced into this, then I'm not going to let it happen, But the whole debate seems to have forgotten that there are women's lives at stake here, because believe it or not, the mortality rate for pregnancy in women in America is still extremely high.
Yeah.
So to say that abortion shouldn't happen unless these very specific circumstances, no, it should be, or for me, it should be a conversation between a medical professional and the individual involved, and have absolutely nothing to do with politics, and wait for it, I'm going to say it, absolutely nothing to do with religion either.
No, I do agree with you on that one. I think, again, like we said about the quite not flippant story at the beginning, but the light-hearted story at the beginning, as a minister, it's our job to sit and listen to the person who's going through the stuff, and for me, not even to give opinion, just to support them and make sure that they feel they are doing the right thing by them. Can I just pick up on a couple of, Michael said, a pertinent question, can somebody pass before the time? I'm going to jump in on that and say, for me, you pass when you're meant to. I'm not saying your life is preordained or there's such a thing as faith or destiny. But I do know you pass when you're meant to. And that, I suppose, ties into this topic of, is that child's journey for this life? Is that what they were meant to do? Or were they sent for that woman to experience something? I don't know. And then I spotted Fiona's as well, depending on the circumstances. Yes. Fiona, the big point for this one for me is you had that choice. You had that choice. you were given that opportunity to make that decision for you, and you made what was the right decision for you. Somebody else, depending on their circumstances, might have made the other decision, or even chosen to carry the child and then have it fostered or adopted. The central point in all of this is you were given that choice, and what this legislation has led to and is going to lead to in other circumstances, because they're not finished with this. They haven't gone gun laws, whatever else, and Roe versus Wade, we're done, tick. They are going to move on, I have no doubt, to other cases that they want to look at overturning, whether that be same-sex marriage or whatever else. It's opened the doors for them. And
Emily's comment, yes. I believe that's in reference to high mortality rate. It's going to be higher.
Yes.
Let's not forget that. Yeah, let's not forget that it's a medical condition, not an illness, or it's a medical condition that is throughout history been extremely fatal.
Yes.
You know, and no matter what we say and no matter what we do, and I think probably pretty much everyone, certainly you and I, are on the same page. It is about the woman's right, and you know, the topic that you were, the way you were speaking with. Let me just check the name again because I don't like getting names wrong. Fiona, thank you. Yes. Your response to Fiona, I completely agree with. Before we spoke about this, and I was saying the only time I've ever been made to stop and think was, and this is probably more to do with, you know, going that step further with medical sciences. If you could identify that someone was going to have an extremely debilitating illness in their life in the womb, and you then had the option to abort, what if that option had been available and the choice had been made to Stephen Hawking's mother? We would be missing huge swathes of absolutely majestic and wonderful, brilliant scientific thought.
Let's tie it back to our previous conversation about pride. If they identified the gay gene, Alan Turing would have been aborted, and we'd still probably be at war.
No, we'd be speaking a different language, yes. And this is the thing, you know, everyone keeps telling me that I need to think about the bigger picture, but I like to look at the details. I like to look at the individual impact that it has on a human being, for the individual as well. So whilst I understand the most important thing is that, you know, a discussion has to be had, I still feel that the most important thing is that individual's right to choose. I'm not saying that abortion should take place any later than within the first couple of months, you know, because there is then a life forming. But I think we have to be sensible and reasonable and have a genuine conversation based on scientific fact as much as anything, rather than assumptions that an ectopic pregnancy is a life. You know, this wasn't a random person talking on the street. This isn't the woman who was interviewed on Twitter saying Homo sapiens, let them die, save the humans. This is someone who is responsible for serving and protecting their community by making laws that are there to defend and protect the rights of individuals. And I think that's where the biggest issue of this subject is, for me, is because there is still so much ignorance. And, you know, I get thrown at me the separation of church and state all the time. But I don't see that.
No.
Because, you know, the only time that I don't see it is when we're defending the right to walk around with a gun. You know, my favorite response to that is, well, would you say that a little old lady who's being robbed doesn't have the right to defend herself? Well, you know, she doesn't need an AK-47 to do that.
No.
And if it was the community that we're trying to impress on people that it is, then wouldn't need to be. And you know, that right to own a gun does go to the illegal people as well, using them, the murderers and the criminals and the thugs.
Yes, of
You know,
course.
and
Yeah.
you know, I don't like using this analogy, but it struck a chord with me. They was interviewing a teenager, and they said everyone's talking about the right of an embryo to live out a full life, but when it comes to gun laws, it's nothing's being done that could easily be done to stop someone going on a rampage with a load of teenagers. What about their right to live?
I just want to take issue with you there, Nick, because
Do.
They train their children to hide under desks at school when a gunman walks in.
That I get. What I'm talking about is those those people.
What I'm
in
saying
power.
is, what I'm saying is,
I'm sorry. Yeah, let's hide under a table. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the right of the embryo is okay, but these children who are at school minding their own business, you know, have to hide under a table because we're allowing people to walk around with guns. That for me is, yeah. I did see Emily.
Yes, I think is this the one you saw?
Yes, that's the one. And Ohio had the trigger law. Yeah, and I knew Ohio had the trigger law. Yeah, again, it's choice, and because we're looking at this from the spiritualist perspective, for me, it's about helping my congregation to make the right choices for them in their circumstances. Absolutely. Which is where we should sit. My personal opinion on abortion is my business, and I may or may not agree. But if somebody wants to have that abortion, my job as a minister is to make sure they've thought about it, thought about the potential consequences of that decision. Are they going to be able to live with that decision going down the line? Because I know people who haven't been able to. They've done it for the right reasons at that time, but then when their circumstances changed, they've questioned it. And the only thing I can say to them is, you made that decision with the facts you had in front of you at that point in time, and you made the right decision at that time. Given the chance again, in this circumstance, you would make a different decision. That's the way of life. We ain't got a crystal ball. Even we as mediums don't predict the future.
Yeah, but I might have one over there, but it doesn't work. I would like to share Fiona's story, and I think it's important because this is the right to choose that we're fighting for. You know.
Yes.
Fiona says, "I'd like to share my story. I was told at 8 months maybe I should have an abortion, as they said she would be in a vegetated state. I went away. People at my church prayed for me and my unborn child. I asked for a second opinion and went to Bristol. I had my daughter and she had brain damage, but nothing to what they said. I believe that's the parent, and that is absolutely. And once again, you know, you did absolutely the right thing as an individual by seeking out a second opinion. And absolutely, if something doesn't sit right with you, there's a reason for it. And I think we should always fight for that.
Yeah, and I do agree. That's the power of prayer. That's the power of prayer. But coming back to what we're here for today is to look at things from that spiritual perspective. And yeah, it's absolutely the decision of the person involved to make the choices about their life, not to have that imposed on you by a higher power, whether that be a church, a government, a state, whatever it is. But yeah, well, to be honest, Emily, we went and waved banners outside of an arena a while ago as the Rainbow Project because we had an evangelical person coming to do a talk in the arena in Sheffield. And yeah, I've never heard so much hate spouted by an individual in my life. Nuclear bombs should be used when you're looking at ISIS. A preacher said that, Nick. A preacher
Yeah.
said that. There we go.
And you know, I'd like to pick up on. I think it makes an absolutely wonderful final comment. From me, anyway. You'll have your own, but from me,
No.
Emily, I'm taking your comment as my final comment, because the rest of people are on a spectrum supporting choice. I think the whole world is on a spectrum in one way or another, and I always believe that those that are decent, good, kind, and caring about the needs of others, which is really what this whole day has been about, they are on the nicer end of the spectrum. I still believe that, because what we've got to remember about the overturning of Roe v. Wade is that rather than a government decision, it was just a group of highly charged conservative justices, who made a decision. I think it's 12 people, is it? Correct me online if I'm wrong, because I do know we've got some friends from America watching. I believe there are 12 justices on the Supreme Court. So 12 people made that decision for the whole of the United States, which then led to the states now being very much divided on whether or not it's going to happen. So
bye, Fiona.
We're going to be going as well too, Fiona. So thank you for joining us. Your final thought on the matter, though, Tony?
My final thought actually echoes yours, Nick. Was it Emily? Emily, yeah. 12 people have made that decision for the whole of the country, which for me is insane. Much like, I think, giving anybody that much power, any group of people that much power, is a little bit, for me. I mean, I know ultimately somebody has to be in charge, but like we've said before, everybody has to face the consequences of their actions at some point. And I honestly believe these people will, but there we are.
Personal responsibility. What a way to
end. Thank you, Eunice.
Yes, thank you.
That means a lot.
It's been very much an experiment today, and you know what? Had the world have been a little bit more peaceful last week, we might have had an easier start. But we can't shy away from the hard topics, and we can't shy away from, opening up debate.
Exactly. And I think as an alliance, that's what we are here to do, is to talk about the world from the perspective of our beliefs and our faith. Because it's all well and good people coming to Littleport Village Hall on a Thursday and getting a message from a medium. We are more than that as spiritualists. And yes, the messages are important, but the teachings of spirit are also important. And that's what we need to do more of, for me, both as a church and in church, is to give the teachings of spirit and spend a bit more time on the nitty-gritty of it and how that applies to what's going on in the world, like you said. The world through the lens of spiritualism, which is something I want to talk to you about after this podcast.
Absolutely fine. Well, for now, thank you, Reverend Tony, for your conversation, your thoughts, and your wisdom, and that of those in spirit who help you, I know. Thank you to everyone who has been engaging, whether or not you agree with anything we said at all, whether or not you felt that the majority opinion was with you or against you. You had your say, and I hope that we have been fair in bringing up both sides of the conversation. If we haven't, let me know. I'll put it right next week. In the meantime, between now and next week, if you see something that you'd like us as mediums and ministers to discuss, please give me a shout. You know how to get in touch with me on Facebook and YouTube. Give us a shout, ask us questions, give us the topic of conversation, because obviously I can't share videos about it now, so there's even less planning. So, you know, bring it on, give us the topic that you want discussed throughout the week. Until then, Reverend Tony, thank you very much.
No problem.
we'll both get used to that again. And to all of you at home, thank you for watching. I will later on stitch the two parts of today's episode together and put it right and edit out the are we, aren't we bit so that it flows a bit better. But until next week, and unless you are joining us on Thursday night at Littleport Village Hall, which we will be there with Linda Ferguson, and I know Tony's out and about all this week as well, are you not?
I am, yes, and I'll be doing... I know a lot of people are missing my online stuff. I've had a lot of issues going on family-wise and everything, but they are resolving. So my online church is going to be getting back up and going.
Excellent.
So, yeah, just watch out for it, people.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to that. And, of course, we'll see you back here next week when we decide what day it's going to be on a more regular basis. And to everyone at home, from me and from him, it's good afternoon and God bless.
God bless.